Welcome everyone to another episode of Dynamics Corner. Brad, what is the first word in an English dictionary? I'm your co-host, Chris.
And this is Brad. This episode is recorded on April 30th, 2025. Chris. What is the first word in the English dictionary? I don't know. I'd have to go to the English dictionary and look it up. But today we had the opportunity to talk about that, as well as AL development, Business Central, and some cool toys. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Marcel Chabot.
The man of the hour. There he is.
Hello.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing?
You know, all things considered, I'm doing well. 10 fingers, 10 toes, breathing.
On the right side of the AstroTurf, that's all that really matters.
Is there a right or wrong side?
Well, there's the underside of the AstroTurf. You don't want to be there.
How do you know?
Oh, you have a point.
So, yeah, I don't want to get it. I could say so much for that, but I think many may not understand my thoughts on that. But yeah, I don't know which side's the right side. I guess it depends on the day of the week, but not many people have told me about that side. So I really don't know if it's better or not.
Survey's incomplete.
Yes. So maybe we could use Copilot. Copilot could tell us. Do you think Copilot would know?
I don't know. I don't know if Copilot can give me input on the afterlife. I don't know if I trust it.
That'll get too philosophical for you.
Yeah, it's too philosophical. You're correct. And then how do we know if it's correct? So we just wouldn't know.
Right. So I've got a new microphone. So if I sound like garbage, let me know and I can turn knobs or whatever.
It sounds good.
So far it sounds good, but you can turn knobs if you want to see how it sounds.
It's got knobs and dials. I've been harassing everybody. All right, do I sound like I'm in a closet or what?
Some of these microphones, I'm glad with this one I don't have the knobs and dials, but I had the ones with the knobs and dials before and I just didn't understand, and there really isn't a clear way to be able to tell.
No, it's a challenge.
How it sounds.
There's always post-processing. There's always post-edit. You know, as long as you're clear, you're fine. Because there's a lot of, you can do so much after the recording, you know?
And now you can do AI voice correction.
Right. Yeah.
So that if we need to do some I'm not saying that's what we do, but I've seen that there's tools now with AI voice correction that you can do some corrections.
It does help because there are times where we're recording and then the guests, sometimes we don't notice it, but then like once we get the raw file and it doesn't sound really, really good. And there's tools now. Yeah, it does help me kind of remove all of the stuff and just kind of isolate the voice. It's amazing what it can do now. Makes my job easier.
Nice.
I don't think you've ever worked hard, but anyway.
You have AI for that now, man. Just be more creative.
Great, but thank you for taking the time to speak with us this afternoon. I've been looking forward to speaking with you, and also it was great seeing you in Las Vegas as well.
That was a lot of fun.
Appreciate the Uber. It's always nice when someone can figure out how to use the Uber application when you can't. And also congratulations on your recent Microsoft MVP. And before we get into the conversation, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Marcel Chabot. I'm a software developer. I'm the team lead here at the TM Group. I've been doing software development forever, and have been in lots of different industries. I've done everything from brewing beer to rocket engines, in all sorts of different industries. I come out of test and measurement, where we would rip trailer hitches off of pickup trucks and test all the things. Destructive testing was my favorite because I was young, and destructive testing is pretty exciting when you're just out of college and you get to break things for a living, and that was kind of neat.
I would love that.
Yeah, but the industry is super volatile, and things went bad in Michigan, and I moved over to business software and been doing that for 18 years now, and it's a lot of fun. It's interesting in all the different places that we get to because everybody has finances. Everybody has money that's got to come and go. Everybody has a business to run. So you have your CRM systems, your contact management, your finance. Everybody has it. So it's something where I get to put my fingers into all sorts of different industries. And it's been fun how I've worked with breweries building sensor networks to monitor beer, and I've worked with breweries building accounting systems to sell the beer. Not the same ones. I've been hoping for that crossover at some point, but it's been really interesting to have both experiences.
Hopefully you get
Nice.
to experience that. And breaking things for a living must be fun because you get a lot of frustration. It must feel good when you get home. You must be nice and relaxed. And did I hear that you built rocket engines?
I tested some rocket engines. I did rocket engine testing.
How did you test that?
It was a bunch of sensors around something called a pebble bed. It's where you blow hot rocket fuel across a bed of ceramic beads, which they call technically NASA hot, and then the fuel combusts, and you have to be able to control that. And there's a whole bunches of stuff. There's all sorts of PhDs. I just got the wire sensors and hook up computer software to it. And all the PhDs got to watch these numbers go, and I'm like, yay, rockets.
See, it sounds like you had some fun. And with ERP software implementations, it is fun because every implementation is different, it seems like, or every project's different. And as you mentioned, you can get into many different industries. Some organizations will specialize and have niche markets for verticals, as we call them. But then there's others that will deal with many different customers.
And I think it's fun. We set a countdown on a new client, which is time till I can't believe nobody else. You know, they're looking at a report. I can't believe nobody else needs this report. The report doesn't exist. Nobody has ever wanted this before. Nobody wants data this way. But for your particular industry, I can see where that's important. But no, you are the first. And we start a countdown, and everybody at some point, when we're working on an industry that we have never worked in before, ask the question, I can't believe I'm the only one who wants this. Like, yeah, you are. Congratulations.
You should start handing out prize with that. So working with Business Central and being I call you the scientist now. So maybe that will be your new name.
You're not the first.
Oh, I can't believe someone hasn't called you. No, I know. Thank you. Well, I guess maybe I'll take that nickname away. So working with Business Central, how long have you been working with Business Central? You said you made the crossover to software. Have you always worked with Business Central?
I started with GP. Microsoft, the TM group was one of the first GP consultants. Judy Thomas started with this newspaper ad looking for implementers for this new accounting package 40 years ago. So when I moved over to the TM group, it was all GP. But then, GP started to look a little old at 30 some odd years. And we moved over to the next product in that tier, which was Navision at the time, just around the Seaside AL2 cutover. So 14 years ago.
Yeah, that was the cutover, Seaside to AL was 2018. Navision to Dynamics Nav was 2013, 2014. I can't even keep track. I'm trying to play this all back in my head.
Yeah, it takes a long time. Time has flown.
I know. Time is valuable and precious, and how quickly it goes by as you get older. It makes you take a look at what you do with your time and value a little bit differently. So do you work with development for Business Central?
Strictly. My group is strictly development. That's my focus. And our accounting team, our functional team, bless their heart, has for years tried to get me to get credits and debits straight, but I still look at credits and debits from my point of view. And it's backwards because accounting credits and debits are backwards from personal finance. And I still get them backwards all these years later. And they complain, I'll never be an accountant. And I thank them for the compliment and get back to my work.
Yes. As long as the numbers add together properly, that's the important thing.
That's the important thing.
2 + 2 should equal 4. So you work with the development, and AL development's a lot of fun. Business Central development's a lot of fun. You get to do a lot of great things. Maybe not some rocket science type things, but maybe you can as well.
No, but coming out of GP, where you got not one but 2 user definable fields, and moving over to Business Central, where I can define fields all day long, it's such a great switch up to a much more dynamic accounting system.
No, it is great. And through conversation, some of the things you like to do, you like to, I guess, test the limits of some AL development as well, too. Correct?
I do. There's a yearly, I guess it's a competition. It's more of a nerd flex called the Advent of Code. And there's 25 two-part problems that you can try to solve. And it doesn't matter what language you do it in, because it always comes out with a number when you're done. And I tried to solve as many as I could in AL, and I got through week 8. And then things started getting really weird. Some of the answers require recursion, and that worked for a while. And then Business Central just said no. The processing requirements were really high. One of the answers was something called a Fourier transform, where it's complex math on repeating things. And I tried to do a Fourier in Business Central, and it just noped right out. And why would it do a Fourier? It's not the kind of math. There's no accounting that ever would need that. But getting through 8 weeks, which is 16 problems, before it gave up, I thought was pretty good. I bet there's people who could push it farther than me. There's a lot of really smart people out there, and I bet somebody could solve all of them in there. But at some point, I hit the point of diminished returns. I had some really neat things I learned about the limits of BC. And as they add new features in, it'll be more capable later. There's .NET underneath, so...
Yeah, so they expand the library. Well, then depending upon which version you're using, if you're using the on-premises version, you could reference some assemblies and also maybe use a control add-in. That might be cheating, though.
Well, yeah, my goal was to do it in AL. At any point, I could have kicked it off to an Azure function, did the work in an Azure function, and returned the answer. But
no, I
then
understand.
I'm not coding in AL.
I thought about that after I said that and said, then it's not AL. You're just using AL as a gateway to,
to something
else
bigger.
That can solve the problem with the processing.
But that may be the point, that AL has a limit, and stop doing crazy stuff in AL and kick it out to something outside that will do the work for you.
Well, I think that is a good point, because I think everything has a purpose, and you use the appropriate tool for that, for the job.
Mm-hmm.
It's the natural path, isn't it? Like to go beyond outside of AL for a different function.
It is, and it's knowing if AL is the only tool you have, then everything looks like an AL problem. And early in my development career, I knew a handful of languages. I was going to solve every world problem in my favorite language of the time, and wrote some really bad code that I'm afraid might still be out there in the world. And then as you get older and you do more stuff, you realize, hey, this isn't the right way to solve this. Moving on.
Yes, no, it's no. You laugh because you said some really bad code, but I think as languages change, as you change with understanding and knowledge and problem solving, and also even starting a journey through solving a problem, which is what we're doing with development. We're solving a problem or a task or satisfying a need, which again, a need could be for solving a problem. I always look back and say, wow, I would have done that differently. Oh, wow, I can't believe I did it that way. And it may have been effective, it may work, but sometimes as change comes, it's nice to look back and just scratch your head and say, why did I do it that way?
And in the space we're in, we have clients that move between providers. And when we're at a trade show, when we meet up, we're all comrades with the same type of problem, but we're also sometimes competitors, and I will get other people's code and I'll get to read what they did to solve the problem. But you never judge another developer by the code. It could be, and I've been held hostage by clients. You have to get this done in this amount of time. I'm like, I'm about to do something I'm going to regret. And I read an apology. I've gotten somebody else's code, and there was a comment block on top that says, client required this. This is the only way I could solve this at the time. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
it's their
wow.
manifesto.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I've seen some of that, but you make a good point, and I follow that as well. And I've learned over the years, I never criticize someone else's code because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know the situation that they're in, because we have all gone through situations where you have a requirement and that requirement changes throughout the process. Even myself, I say, okay, well, just add this one thing. We'll add this one thing, add this one thing. All those one things, had you known about them all at the very beginning, you would have done something completely different. But you didn't have the opportunity to go back and rework it because some of the requirements may have changed. It's not necessarily in the sense of scope creep, because it may have been a requirement 1 at one point, which was completed. Then requirement 2 was to tack or add additional requirements to the first requirement. And you don't always have the opportunity to go back and redesign and rework everything because of time, budget. A number of reasons. So I try not to criticize. There will be a few rare cases where you can look at something and go, why were you just doing that? But
yeah,
for
this
the
looks
most
like
part,
someone's junior programmer. Yeah, someone's just warming up. The variable names are garbage.
Yeah,
but
so
but for the most part, there's a lot of talented people in the space, and I'll get something, and I start to know names of people. I know several different groups of initials. I'm like, oh, I know this guy. I've seen his stuff before. His stuff is typically good. So why is this crashing? And I'll go through and go, oh, I bet the customer changed how they do this. And you start to know the people in the space, and a lot of respect for a lot of really creative people out there that have solved some problems that I might have just said no.
It is, and with the evolution of the language, it gets a little challenging as well, because now each revision or each version of the language that comes out, you have additional functionalities. So something you may have had to solve even a year ago wasn't in the language. So now you look at it and go, oh, you could have done it this way.
Or for efficiency, I think we had a conversation about that, right, Brad? Like where, would you go back, let's say you go back a year later and it's something that you had built last year, would you take the time to like, oh, okay, maybe I need to rewrite some of these areas to be more efficient? Or do you just leave it alone and just like,
there should be a list. No more temp tables. There should be a list.
I would love to go back. I think it depends on where you are and what you're doing. I think if you have an application or an extension that you're publishing, you should enhance it, obviously, over time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So for the better use of your customers. Customer implementations, it's difficult. When do you do it? How do you do it? Because of the amount of time it may take. And it's not just the time being budgetary constraints, but time for the customer themselves if they have to get involved in testing and user acceptance and all that process too. So it becomes a bigger project. That is a good question of when do you do that? Why do you do that? How do you do that? And do you do that? Because it's also to the benefit of the customer. And sometimes if they don't understand, it's almost as if you have video cameras on your house. I'll buy a video camera today, wait 2 or 3 years. Should I replace the video cameras even though those video cameras are working? What would I get for it? I get better resolution. I'm just trying to take a step back.
Someone still has to pay for it, right?
Would I still get better would I get better resolution and higher quality video or something like that? Somebody does still have to pay for it, but how do you equate the benefit to the cost? And sometimes it's not so easy. So that is a good challenging question of should you do it, and when do you do it, and how do you do it?
Swapping out temp tables to lists, maybe on a grand scale, you'll benefit, but if it's not broken, they're not going to get anything from it right now. But then there's some stuff out there that's like, hey, there's a lot of new features. APIs going from page-based APIs to API 2.0, where they're more stable. You can do the faster read only. There's real value in that. We need to move you from using this page as an API to a real API. Get off the OData.
I'm thinking about all of this now, and it's just really, that's a good framing, because if you go back to a lot of these implementations that they have, how you can do some sort of analysis. Then again, like you said, if they don't realize the benefits and gains that they would get from it, what do you do? Or do you do it as part of another task when you touch it, as they say? So if you have to go and enhance it, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and then it becomes challenging to support some of that stuff as the years go on. And ultimately, you may end up getting forced on some changes to move as the application and the language which evolves,
Yeah, when we all
matures.
get the email, this feature's going away. Time to catch up. Like, oh.
Those wonderful emails.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's at least if you can get some testing ahead of time, you can try to get in front of it. So what are some other cool hacking type things have you done within AL to push it to the limit? So you've worked on that Advent, the 25 week.
Did the Advent of code for fun. No, life's been really busy lately to be able to do any other really crazy stuff. But just a lot of the API things have been a lot of fun to use Business Central as the back end to do work for other APIs and other processes, just because it's easy to write code in. A lot of our integrations, we just push data into BC using an API to a temp table, and then have it, since it's such an easy language to do record-based work in, do a lot of our processing over there. And just having a work frame like AL is just nice. It does record-based work. And if that's what you're doing, I mean, I'd prefer SQL, but it's a close second.
Well, it is, because there isn't many languages. I can't think of, I don't know every language, obviously. It's tough to know them all, and they seem to come and go and even can create them. But where, like you said, it is one unique thing where you have a language where it does handle all of the data management for the most part for you. And like you said, it becomes a record-based system where you can work with the records and work with the data easily as part of the language without having to make the connection, pull back the data set, and to then manage the data set that way. And then it's even, with the UI, putting the fields on the page. It's so simple now. You just have a field and you put it on there, and it's magic. It works with the data set, the underlying data set. So I do like that. I like a lot about the language. I do see it moving. To me, it's becoming more and more .NET. I wonder almost if you should just rip the Band-Aid. I understand for backwards compatibility and all that stuff for over all the years, but eventually do you just... Well, it does get transpiled into C# anyway.
It does in the end. And I cornered one of the developers and said, why can't I just have the rest of my .NET? And it actually came down to performance and stability, where if you gave me all the toys, then I would use all the toys, and the platform is not efficient for all of that. And having a gated set of functions and features means that I won't be doing 40-error transforms in Business Central, because I won't have the tools to do it, and I won't be tempted to waste the SaaS platform's processing power on something it shouldn't do. And that if I really want to unlock it and have all the .NET stuff, kick it out to an Azure function and pay for that, and use all the power I want, but don't use it off of their SaaS platform. And it makes sense. It keeps it keeps us gated. It keeps the mice in the maze, where we're doing the things that they can anticipate. They can code efficiencies around, and they can make sure we're not going to suck up all the resources by doing something crazy.
I accept that. I understand having a scaled back version of C#, I guess you could say, or AL.NET or the such, but it does seem to be aggressive, which has made development much nicer and easier with it, because some of the tasks that you may have to do, and again, you can argue, it goes back to what you're saying with the calendar, how complicated a task would you have to do within an account, ERP software. I'm not saying people haven't done it. I'm not saying there aren't cases to it. So before anybody starts telling me that, we can do all this complex stuff, you can do some amazing and great things. But again, the underlying nature is business processing. And business processing, if you need to communicate with other systems, you have the framework for that. So it's more of, like you said, it's the record management of the data that you process within your ERP system.
It's keeping you focused within the application. You're not like the full stack developer where you have to learn all this hundreds different languages. You're just sticking with AL. Is there any point in time you think that's going to happen, where you have to eventually learn all the other languages because you can integrate it with other things?
I don't know. My team is mixed. So I have two types of developers on my team. I've got the AL developer. He got a job. It's in IT. They bought this new product called Business Central, and look, you can extend it here. Here's a manual and the platform. Go to it, and learned how to develop in AL. And AL is his main language. That's that group's main language. They know AL, and maybe a little bit of a couple others, but they're AL developers, and they approach every problem with straight AL. And then I've got other developers that know a dozen or so languages, program crazy things on the side for fun, and do all sorts of stuff. And they approach things very differently. And it's fun to team them together, because the AL developer will come in records first, and then the page layout will be exactly like every other page in Business Central. And the process flow is very predictable based upon that way Business Central does its stuff. Where my stack developers that know a bunch of different languages are like, well, in C# I would do this, in Pascal I would have gone this way, and they're looking at it from a bunch of different angles on how to process the data, and their layouts come out looking more like Windows apps than Business Central AL pages. But they've made AL do some weird things. It's like, yeah, I need a custom control for this, and they're just knock one out in Java because it would look better if they did it that way. And it's neat because the unconstrained by language brings different ideas in, but then there's efficiencies and concepts and controls from the AL developer, and they kind of pull each other to this really neat center of a really innovative solution to a problem, but still very AL and Business Central friendly.
Yeah.
You hit something. I think from my perspective, and I just read a book called Range, which talked about specialization and understanding, which goes back to something with development that I've always believed in, is sometimes it's understanding the concepts of what you're trying to do versus the language that you're doing it in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you understand the concept of what you're trying to do, even more so in 2025, you can learn the language that you need or how to say it in the language. Similar to if I went into a foreign country and I didn't know the language, I would be able to learn by being immersed in it somewhat quickly, or like I would understand what I was trying to say and I would be able to figure out what I was trying to say. Maybe not learn the entire language, but at least conceptually I knew logically what I was trying to say. I think it's the same case when it comes to programming languages, because again, it's another language. It's a way of speaking in a sense. And also to your point with what they do with this, with coming around it, I see a lot of developers that are talented developers in another language or another platform come into AL and try to do the same thing. As you had mentioned, some unique and creative ways of trying to solve problems within AL, but without understanding the business application, they simply it creates some more issues, or they think they have to solve the problem with a little more complexity than you need to do with an AL, because AL has the structure to work within the application. So in a couple places, it goes back to what I'm trying to say is I think understanding the application is extremely important, and how it works, even from the user interface, is what you had spoken about. So that way, from the experience point of view and even the flow point of view, you can make sure that you develop within there, and then also understand what you're trying to do versus copy and paste a bunch of code that you see in another function and try to get it to work without really understanding why you're doing what you're doing.
Vibe coding.
To me, the language comes easy. It's what we used to see a lot of back early on, was a lot of copying paste from some of the major code units, and you could actually see where somebody maybe took pieces of individual sets of code and put them together, and it did work to give them the result. But if you analyzed each thing of what each line of code or what the code was doing, sometimes they were counteracting each other, and it's almost like set a flag, unset the flag, set the flag, unset the flag, and they could have reduced it. So
could have been simpler.
I do see that where a lot of individuals come in without knowing the application, it becomes a little more challenging.
A little challenging, and it's I think it comes down to one of the things I chat with my low code, no code friends about is, I mean, the language learning AL is a barrier. It is more complicated than Power Automate or any of the other workflow tools. But the challenge, I don't think, and maybe it's because I'm old and graybeard at this point, the challenge is not the language, it's learning how to solve a problem in the environment you're working. How do you, the client says they want this. How do you break their expectations down into things and steps and processes that you can do? And I think that's the hardest part of any programming project, is not the language. And again, that might be because I'm old. I'll accept that. But it's a lot of it is teaching people how to look at a problem and go, okay, what's the smallest unit in this problem that we can solve right now? What's the first thing? Well, the first thing is we're going to need to, and they blurt out the whole problem. It's like, no, that's the whole thing again. How about what does the data look like, and break down the data? Okay, now what's the flow of the data? How does it get in, get out, and work it piece by piece? Taking a complex problem and turning it into those little pieces that you can code is, I think, the real skill that is the toughest part to learn for any language. And once you know how to think like a programming language, then learning new languages is not as hard, because, all right, I know I need to break down to this piece. How do I do it in AL? How do I do it in Lua? How do you do it in C#? That's syntax, but you need to find how to get to this piece. And a friend of mine was learning Lua and asked me to help him learn it. I'm like, okay, well, what we're going to do is we broke it all down in English, and we hopped into Copilot and asked it how to do each of the little steps in Lua, and we were able to write the program in like 2 hours. Like, I don't know Lua, but I knew how to break down software, and I know how to ask the questions. And off we went. And it was a whole lot of fun learning a new language by Copilot. And I can see how that's going to help a lot of people, but Copilot doesn't know how to break the problem down yet. And I think that's the part that people are most challenged with.
You hit it right there. It was similar to what I was trying to say, is it's not the language because you can figure it out. It's understanding the framework of what you have to work with, and then being able to break down. And your point of problem solving now, that is where the most value is for a problem, is how can you analyze the problem, break that problem down, and come up with the solutions. And you're absolutely correct. Copilot works best with small bite-sized chunks.
So
it doesn't work.
So let me ask you this then, like, for people that are coming into AL development that may have a different background on different programming language. Yes, it should be easy for them to pick up, understanding the basic of the syntax of a programming language. But what happens for those people that are coming, maybe a full stack developer that understands that, they have to build the backend framework, front end framework, all that stuff, coming into AL? It's not the language that they're not understanding, but the limitation of like the other tools that they can use. I think that's where the challenge is, and I had spoken to a full stack developer that uses, React and Ruby and all the other languages out there, the modern languages. And they had an opportunity to look at AL, and they're like, okay, what else can I do with it? And then of course that's where they get stuck, because they're so used to other tools in their tool belt to build something. In this case, you're kind of in the confines of like what you have on your tool set, and that's it. So
yeah, it's going from free range. I can do anything in this language. Not that I should. You can do a whole lot in React. And then you go over to AL, you're writing accounting software. You don't need to animate anything. Put that down. There are things you don't need to do here. And the language is not designed to let you do those things here. And it's back to, I would talk about, giving you free range of .NET. It's not going to give you the resources and the computational power to do it. And we're also going to sell it at a pretty decent price per license because we're not going to give you the ability to do things that are off brand. You are doing accounting here, and that is all.
So in that case, if you are someone coming in, and again, we're always looking for new talent, right? Coming into the Business
Yep.
Central development, and some of those may bleed from other modern languages. So is it fair to say if they were to build a solution, they should also build it with a mindset that it can be consumed by other tools or consumed by other um, uh, uh, whatever integration language that you're going to use. Like, for example, you may build a solution where a Power Automate can consume, right? Is that
Right.
something that you should consider as a person that's building solution?
When I'm building stuff, I like to think about, okay, I'm giving them some tables, I'm giving them some pages, because that's what's in scope right now. A couple tables, couple pages. But it's a few minutes to take these key events that happen and turn them into business events. And that lets us fire easily into Power Automate. Maybe I'll throw, it's just me working here, but I'll throw integration events in here so that later we can extend and grab on. It's nice to think about future you and the future use cases, especially when things like business events, which are just, fancy webhooks, are almost free to add in. When this process finishes, just fire that webhook. And then later when the customer says, I really wish I could get an email when this finished. Okay. Go to Power Automate, grab this event, send yourself an email. And they're like, oh, wow, you really thought that through. Yeah, I really thought that through. And it gives you that extra bonus thing. And then when I find them from others, I'm like, that person was thinking about the future too. And it's great because we have those abilities, and knowing that the language has limits and that I may need to send this out to another package, another product, another tool set to finish or to do more work. Knowing you have those limitations and coding in the ins and outs for it makes everyone's life better. But sometimes you just can't, because a lot of these projects that we do, we give them a quote, but the budget was set before we showed up. They know how much they're willing to spend on the project. And really, we're giving them a quote, and then we're going to argue it down to what they were going to spend anyways, and make compromises. And sometimes that extensibility is the first thing off the table. But when I get the chance, it's great to be able to do, and then get those benefits later when that extra scope does come up a year later, when they're ready to add in automations and things. You've already put the hooks in. That's great. That's a lot of fun. And you've prepped it to go to a different language.
It is important to put that in there because with the application constantly changing and evolving, to have that flexibility, as you had mentioned, to put some of those events in there, or to even code it to the smallest possible function and then tack those functions and build them blocks together. Is there savings in the long run? And it doesn't take much to get into that habit. As you had said, at first it may take some time to think about it and to do it, but where I got into the habit, that was testing. Once you really start getting into automated testing, it teaches you or forces you to work with the lowest common denominator of functions. And then you just stack those together in building blocks, even if you have to do the repetition as you go through each, to be able to have that expansion and to provide the value. You're funny that you say the budget. They do have a budget. They do have, I love those conversations. There's a budget of what they want to spend, which means what's the value, right? I always look at it as the value. What's the value to them for what they're looking for, if them being the customer? And then when you have to give a quote for it, I almost want to say when someone wants to argue it down, it's almost, again, if somebody, I always say in every episode, is like building a house or putting a deck on. If you have to make a compromise, I told you the deck was $2,000. If it was $1,000, I would have told you it was $1,000.
Right.
So if you want to take $1,000 worth of value off, okay, well now instead of using Trex vinyl, for example, if it's Trex vinyl or Trex composite, you now have to use wood. The wood will rot. It can be a cheaper price, but you'll have to replace it you have to replace it sooner than you would have to if you had the Trex. And that's sometimes the conversation that you have. And it does come down to everybody has a value for something, right? And all of us do it. It's if I go buy food, what's the value of the food I buy to me? I'll pay the value that I think it is. And it's almost like a different conversation when you start looking at the value of it and then understanding the changes that you have to make. And it's not like a negotiation where, you come in high and, with the intention of, okay, well, we can really get it for this, but we're going to shoot for the stars. It's always difficult conversations to have.
Yeah. And I think, and you mentioned about like your future self, maybe having that conversation of like, if it's a PTE or a specific problem you're trying to solve for the client, it's a one-off thing. You estimate it and then you build it. Maybe you'd add some business events, but maybe from the flip side of that, if you're building an ISV application or something like that, then perhaps consider that so that your solution can be extendable beyond the confines of Business Central. In this case, give some love to the low code, no code people there in the world where they can then interact with your application. And I don't see that as often. I haven't seen that as a practice out there, but it would be easier for benefit for your clients that are using your app, but also a benefit for somebody in there where they can consume it and do something beyond your application. I think your application becomes very useful in that sense, and just focusing on maybe adding the features that pertains to the business, but the consumption of other areas would be helpful. Because there's been times now where we have a client that says, "Hey, we want to utilize Power Automate. We wanted to see or trigger based upon a change on this table." Well, the list you have is very limited, and it may be a table that is a custom table or whatever. You have to build that, right? But it'd be really nice for maybe it's my wish list for all the ISVs out there that to consider those for when you're building your application.
When I talk to ISVs, I usually corner them and say, okay, look, here's the deal. If you tell me that your product does 100% of everything my customers want, there's either one of two things are true. One, you're bloated and way too expensive. Or two, you're lying to me. One or the other, because there's no way you can do 100% of what my clients want. They're diverse. They've got odd expectations. They span so many industries. You can't make a product that does everything they want. So give me a product that does 80% of what they want and a lot of webhooks.
Yep.
Give me business events. Give me hooks. I will do the 20%. That's what I'm good at. I don't want to write a warehousing product. I don't want to have to maintain an entire warehousing product, but I'll write the 20% that turns your warehousing product into their warehousing product and get the most benefit out of it. And then you don't have to deal with all of the weirdness. Write the best 80% you can and then give me the 20. And that's where people like us all shine.
Yeah.
Like, this works almost like I want it to. I got you, fam. What do you want it to do? And if they've got all the hooks in there, then we set it up and we make it do what they want. And the customer's really happy. We're only dealing with this little 20% that we tweaked. And the ISVs got the other 80. And those types of relationships work great.
Yeah, it's spot on.
And I've got a series of ISVs that do that.
Yeah, it's spot on, because there's been times where like this function doesn't exist in this ISV, and then whether you have an opportunity to extend that, or if you don't, you send an email to the ISV and say, hey, maybe add this on your future release. But if you create some other events where they can consume, for example, even as simple as notification, that Power Automate can consume that, you don't need a developer. A client can go ahead and just consume it or extend it using Power Automate for their whatever use they need. It's not something that you should maybe don't care about. But giving that power back to the end user, it's powerful. Makes your product much easier to handle.
Yeah, and I got ISVs that I'll send an email to, hey, when I get to right here, I need an event. And sometimes they'll send back going, oh yeah, that's the on before blah, blah, blah. Like, great, thank you. I'm going to go use that. Other ones it goes, okay, next release, we're doing a release in a week. Watch for the event. Good, thank you, and be able to hook in and do the things I want to do, and that type of the ISV relationship in this space is great because they're typically really open to listening to us down here on the ground saying, I don't want you to add this to the product. That would be crazy, but I need it. So can I have a hook or an event or something to do this? And they're pretty receptive about that.
They are. A lot of them have been very willing to help. Again, because
some less.
Thankfully, I haven't had to run into too many challenging ones. I think everybody wants to be, it's the benefit of everybody. Rising tides raise all ships.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jump for a little bit. So you worked with GP before.
Yes.
Can you develop with GP or in GP or extend
GP?
GP
has its own language called Dex. And it's my least favorite language. So as a company, we did virtually no Dex. We farmed it all out. At one point, GP tried to do a .NET wrapper that let me write GP forms in .NET, and they looked almost like GP. And that didn't go anywhere. Most of our work was fiddling with stored procedures and SQL triggers to do more math. There was a couple tools called Extender that let you add fields. It was very, I want to say dirty, because a lot of times you're just in the stored procedures or watching for insert events on SQL tables to do automations. It was challenging. And we still have lots of clients on GP. The migration is slow, so I still get lots of calls to work on it. And it's challenging when everything you do is outside the product. So you're attaching on SQL, you're using extenders and things, but you're not a first-class extension unless you're in Dex. And even when you're in Dex, loading in these dictionaries, they're called, they kind of just bolt onto the side just barely. And then moving over to something where BC, where all extensions are treated equally, you have parity across everybody. It's totally different. I can do anything the big boys do. In fact, we have the big boys code. So if they're doing it, we can look at how they did it. And it's very, very different and very constraining.
No, that's
on the GP side.
I've talked with GP users. I haven't really talked to anybody about the GP development or extension to get a fully understanding of how you make enhancements to it. So it seems even from the transition, so not only would you get a product that's a fully, if you were to move from GP to Business Central, you also have the ability of the flexibility, again, where you have an application that would have 80% of what your business needs and the last 20%, which may give you some uniqueness or specialty for your individual specific business. It's much easier to get there and maintain and move forward than it sounds like it is within GP.
Yeah, there's a point in the conversation when we're moving people over and we're starting to do their data migration. It's like, oh, you used these two user-defined fields for these values. What are they for, and where do you want them in BC? And they're like, oh, well, this is, the customer remote account number or whatever. Okay, so you need remote account number. What else do you need? Well, we have another Excel sheet where we keep track of what system it is. Do you want me to put remote access system on the customer record? And their heads explode. Because like, wait, you can just add that field? Yeah. Do you have other data about this customer that you're keeping scattered, as my grandmother would say, from hell to breakfast? Do you have scattered data that you would like here? And always there's Excel sheets that come out of nowhere of here's all this other data we keep about our accounting system, but it doesn't fit inside GP, so it's over here in this Excel sheet. It's like, oh, well, I'll just add those fields and we'll just import that data, and automatically we transform their business just by getting rid of an Excel sheet of poorly managed data and putting it right inside. Those types of constraints, when they go away, they really change how business works. It's a lot of fun.
What's the biggest constraint? I know there's been apprehension of moving from GP to BC. What is the typical one? One that I've heard it's typically a customization that's unique. And trying to replicate that in Business Central may not be viable or maybe too expensive. I don't know. I'm just curious from your perspective. I've never worked in GP either, in passing, but never done anything beyond that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, GP is 40 years old and it does lots of things in a very GP way, and moving those processes into the BC world. I mean, GP is segment accounting and BC is dimension accounting. There are different ways to think about and work your data. And if your business has been influenced by the way GP does things, then you have to change the way you do business, because BC is a different way of doing things. And most people don't think their accounting package has dictated how they run their business, but it does. If it is more work for you to put data in a certain way, then you will find a way to put it in that's easier, and your business will constrain itself to that methodology. And then, being 40 years old, there's lots of bolt-ons to GP that the companies don't exist anymore. I can't get that customization. It's not there. And it was there's some really big ones that haven't moved to BC, probably are never going to move to BC. And moving those specific clients over is very difficult, because there are tools that just don't exist.
Yeah, and that would have to be rewritten, or hopefully an ISV exists
at some
right?
great expense.
Yeah.
And it'll be expensive.
And the customer pays for that, right? It's not like someone has a deep pocket that can recreate that solution. And you do hope that there's a ISV or add-on on the app stores that would partly replicate that, but there's always going to be a little bit of effort to somehow get that to work, or maybe even change a business process because of that. So I think that's where a lot of challenges.
And that goes for any system. When we pull people off of QuickBooks and they have to follow a more strict rule set, Business Central rules are more strict than QuickBooks rules. A lot of it dealing with the fact that Business Central is multinational. You can do things in QuickBooks that's not legal in Europe. And so there are more rules. Pulling someone from NetSuite or any of the other great accounting packages, there's nothing wrong with them. Intact is cool. But they all have rules, they all have limitations, and they all dictate a bit of how you do business by those limitations and those features. I do it this way because NetSuite does this really well, and it streamlined my business by doing this. If BC does that a different way, you're going to have a hard time switching. And I'm not going to rewrite BC to make it into NetSuite. That's just not how we do.
Yeah, there's so many of those, right? Where they're coming from another ERP, going to Business Central, and it's like, I want it to work just like that one, just like this.
And a lot of times, those folks are coming over by acquisition. They got bought, parent companies on BC, you're getting on BC. They don't want to do it.
So they'll find a reason not to. And that sometimes is a risk during implementation, is if somebody's saying that they can't do something or they need something, really validate why they need to do it that particular way. In some cases, it could be from a self-imposed limitation, or a limitation that was within the previous system or a previous process, or even the size of the warehouse they were in at one particular time, and they just came up with a process that you had to follow with. It's challenging. It's challenging. It's we can go all over the place with this, but to think about the development within AL, from the AL development point of view, do you ever take a look at when to develop, when to extend, versus when to use the base functionality?
That's always a challenge. I'm a developer. I'm paid to write code. So a lot of times when I turn to my client and go, you know what, you should just download this extension. It's free. You should just do that one. It breaks my heart a little, because I would like to write the cool code. That's kind of what I'm paid to do. But at the same time, it's the customer's best interest. And that's a part of being the graybeard, is when I was younger, I would write code for everything. And now, you start to get older and you're like, I don't want to maintain code for everything. That's a lot of extra work. And clients hate paying for you fixing things that broke, that they didn't break. If it doesn't bring value, the big wave updates when something changes and I have to do a fix, they're not getting any new features from me, but I have to go fix something that Microsoft broke. They hate that. And the more code I put out there, the higher tech debt there is. So I want to extend when it brings the most value to the client. I want to use base functionality when I can, and use off-the-shelf things that I can buy and leave that tech debt with somebody else to manage when it's applicable. And again, it's back to that 20%. I would like to be able to use the core and then pick up modules on that from reputable ISVs for 80% of the stuff the client wants to fill that gap. And then I'm only developing 20%. And that comes down to tech debt. Like InsightWorks, they've got a huge package. That's a lot of tech debt, but it's one deployment. And when it breaks, they fix one thing that impacts 1,000 clients. If Microsoft breaks something and it's in all of my extensions, I got to go fix it on every single client. They recently renamed a function. And if you were copying reports, back in BC 15, 16, there was no report extension. So if you need to change a report, you'd copy the report, you'd paste it, and you'd change the number. And then you'd edit the report. Dark, dark days those were. So all the reports that were modified that way had a function in it that Microsoft decided that it should be the full name, not this crazy short name. And I had to go find it. It was in 26 of my clients that we copied that report for.
You're talking about the language?
Yeah. Yes. Language is not allowed. I had to go find and change it to CU language in everybody.
Yeah, language was one of those ones that that was just a recent update that they got anybody, like you said, who would copy the reports over. I saw that.
And sequence template. Template sequence. It was SQNCE. Now it's sequence, like the full word. That bit me on a couple.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see some of how this evolves. And like you said, you made some good points. The tech debt, where you can manage it in one location, in one place, and it also provides a very better value for the implementation as well. Like you said, you don't have all these little offshoots off, all these little crazy extensions.
Yeah,
to do some certain things.
My team would rather solve the weird problems. They don't want to, the easy stuff that there's something I can get off the shelf really well doesn't help the client. It doesn't excite the team. If you've got a team that's excited by sitting with the client, talking through a challenging problem and finding a neat solution, that's a great team to work with. And having them do weird little things where there's already packages to solve them, that's no fun. We didn't get in this development career to be bored. We wanted to play with the latest technology, solve challenging problems. It's kind of fun. We're broken people. That's what we do. And being able to have the opportunities to do the neat projects, that comes from staying out of the things that have already been solved.
Yes, thank you.
Ouch.
Well, that's okay, but I'm with you on. It's always what I say. It's when everyone says they try to do this cool thing and they don't want to hold on to it to where they're maintaining it forever. Or me, I've always had the mindset I'll teach someone to do it because then I can go off and do the cool things. And it's like you said right there. Don't waste your time doing the things that have already been solved, or there's a way to solve it easily. Worry about and focus your time on doing the things that are challenging, and not challenging because you're only doing the things that are challenging, but value and spend your time where it's needed. And if something hasn't been solved, if you have something complicated to work on that versus, like you said, creating an entire warehouse implementation software package when there's some that are already available that you can extend, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're broken.
I don't know.
Are you broken or is everybody else broken?
I have a stack of board games behind me. I've got weird electronic things happening back there. That crazy orb right there is actually changing colors and patterns based upon the online status of my team members. It's connected into teams, and it just, the patterns on the ball change based upon their availability.
That's very cool.
And it just sits there.
Why do you do that?
That's the kind of broken I am.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you were doing it just to see if somebody was online or if they were offline, or you just wanted to tinker.
It started as a Christmas project. I made a wreath that had all the lights on it were different team members on the wreath, because what is the holidays without a little bit of light stocking of your coworkers? And it was behind me and changing colors, and I spent a lot of time doing it, so I have that.
See, that's the stuff I want to talk with you about. I want to do that cool stuff.
Yeah, it's like there's all these side projects.
That?
It's not just business central, right?
Right. No, it's all side projects. That's there are a bunch of lights called a NeoPixel, and there's a board called an ESP32. There's a little microcontroller that's hooked on my Wi-Fi, and I've got a companion app on my computer that gets everyone's team status and sends it over to it.
Did you write the companion app?
Yep.
Okay.
Actually,
did you do this with like that Raspberry Pi? I was reading, but I say I can only do so many things, but I would like to have some of those cool things. Is that board similar to like those Raspberry Pis?
The Pi is a whole computer. This is less so. It runs a block of code. You can write code, and it runs that code. It doesn't have an operating system like you would with a desktop. And this actually came out of COVID. The kids were home from school. I've got meetings, so I had hung 2 lanterns outside because my wife works from home too. And the lanterns were hooked to our team status, and if we were on calls, they would turn red. And that way, when the kids came terrassing down the stairs wanting snack or something, they'd see 2 red lights outside and stop and go back upstairs.
See, that's a practical use. I like that. And that way you don't have to worry about turning it on or turning it off.
Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like the on-air light. And they were outside our offices so that the kids would know what our status is.
That's something I want to do.
It's on my GitHub if you're looking for it. The whole project is there.
Which, the Teams one or the light? The team light or the I'm on a call light? Or are they all on?
Well, the on the call light is just the Teams light watching one channel, where that guy is the Teams watching everybody's channel. So it's just a matter of who do you want to light, whose status goes to which light. So you can put your status being all of them. So I can set it to my status, which would turn it all red now. So it went all red on the background there.
I can't see it.
Yeah, it's red. I see it.
It's kind of blown out. Or I could set it to Dottie's status. Well, she's free. Now it's all green.
That is,
and then it'll
fascinating. Brad, maybe I'll do that for you.
I like this.
Are you available? I could just look back.
I like that. No, I see that. That's
and now it's going back to the work pattern.
That is hilarious. That is some of the cool side projects, right? To be able to do those.
See, those side projects are cool. That is, it's like I said, but there's only so many things you can do. With technology and everything going around, I find it's hard for me to want to read. Sometimes I feel like I have to go outside, see the sun, and it's just
go touch grass for a minute.
Yeah,
you don't have grass down there, Brad.
Oh.
I have grass.
Oh, you have grass.
I think.
Okay.
And then I do things with 3D printers and lasers. Have you ever been to a makerspace?
Yes,
No.
I have been to a makerspace. My son.
You have?
Yeah, my son is on makerspace, and that's fun to see.
So yeah, for Brad, it's like a gym for nerds. Instead of having weights and swimming pools, ours has got a wood shop, a metal shop, 3D printers, laser cutter engravers.
Lego
It's got all that
robotics.
stuff.
Where is that? You don't have to
mine's a mile up the street, but if you look for maker spaces near me, also called hacker spaces, they're different ones. They're usually community based. There's another one in the next town over. They're more electronics and auto body. They have vehicle lifts. There's one north of us near the theater district in Manchester, called let's see, Make It in Nashua, Manchester Makerspace. They do a lot of theater, a lot of props, a lot of work like that because they're near a theater, so their space is very theatrical. Ours is in a school, so it's super educational focused. It's a lot of fun, and all these places let you get in on tools that my wife won't let me buy.
I heard of it. That's why I asked, because I've heard of one around there, and I remember talking with them when they were trying to put it together because they were looking for funding to help because they wanted to go with the educational portion of it, which I agreed with, because any place where you had, that's why I was asking about, because I had a memory of that with seeing when someone was looking for funding, because then they would allow local school age children to come use the services so that they could learn different things. So that's why I was asking. I was just wondering if it was the same one.
Yes, it was. Make It Labs in Nashua has done some really cool stuff. They're a fantastic group.
Yeah, that's the one that I was referencing.
Makerspace is amazing, especially for young. I know my son was doing Lego robotics, and so they get a lot of funding from local tech companies like STEM, things like that. So, you are welcome to do it even as an adult. So, get to learn all of that stuff. So it's great to see them build something and then have a Lego robot solve problems with some of the obstacles that it has to go through, which is very, very fascinating. And of course, it gets them started on, programming language and developing those things. Pretty cool.
See, if Marcel,
my son was learning how to MIG weld. He's got a MIG gun, there's sparks flying everywhere, and I hear him giggling under the mask as he's melting metal and having a blast. It's great.
Had I known Marcel was so close and into all this stuff, I wouldn't have moved.
Well, you're welcome back anytime.
Well, I'll be back. Don't you worry. I'll be back.
I missed the get together last time because it just kept moving around, and I wasn't able to.
No, I understand. We'll definitely get it on the next trip. But I have to be back with some more permanence. As I always celebrate, New Hampshire will always have my heart. So,
if you're up on a Thursday, we have Makerspace open house every Thursday from 6:30 to 9. Come on by, and we'll cut some stuff with a laser.
Ooh, that's so cool.
I want to make a Teams thing.
Okay.
Or something. I want to make something. I don't know. I don't know if I wanted to get into that, to get into the Raspberry Pi. I was trying to think of like some cool practical uses or something I could do. Maybe I'll have to like tie it to Business Central somehow. I don't know.
There's API. A thing called a Pi hole that you can make. It's a one-day project. You can order your Pi online. And what it does is you plug it into your network and you set it as your DNS. And when web pages pop up that have ads, it sends the ads into a black hole so they don't show up on your screen. And it sits back in my network cabinet, plugged into the network, and all my computers in the house are ad blocked through the Pi hole. Wow. It's a one-day project. Google it, Pi hole, PI-HOLE.
I'm going to look at it. Pi hole. I thought your Pi hole was something like I always heard of Pi hole being a mouse.
Yeah, you're putting your Pi hole. No, it drops all of the ads. It does a great job filtering. Doesn't get 100%, but for no load on my computers, it does a great job of toning down all the ads online.
I will have to look that up and see what I can do with that. And I'll definitely, the next time I'm in the area, if it fits on the Thursday evening, have to come to this maker. Now, and the weather's nice. Well, maybe you have to be. Is it better when the weather's nice or better when it's cold and miserable?
It's in a school, and as such, there is no air conditioning in the summer because the school is not technically open. So it gets hot in there. So cooler days are better.
Okay, that's what I started to think about the time of the year because I know how it gets in those. I'll definitely have to go through that. And then we'll also have another get together the next time in the area, and we'll try to not do it on a Thursday. It just worked out. You know how the schedule is when you try to get several people together. Well, Marcel, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I look forward to speaking more with you, and I have to check out that Advent thing. I know we spoke about that some months ago as well, because unfortunately, sometimes the year gets a little bit busier, but now
it does.
Things are freeing up where I'm going to have a little extra time. to do some fun things. So we do appreciate taking time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me on. It was a blast.
It's always, and we couldn't do this without individuals such as yourself. If anyone would like to learn more about makerspaces, about some of the cool team things you can do, AL development, GP, Business Central, all the cool nerdy things you do, or even rocket science, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Marcel Chabot, or you can find my blog at aardvarklabs.blog. And I post educational content, makerspace stuff there almost weekly. I have some bigger projects in mind that will probably slow that pace down. So stay tuned to see what I'll be working on there.
And next time we'll have to get into how the Aardvark Labs name came, because when I saw that with you months ago, I was trying to figure out the relationship. Who comes up with an aardvark? So there has to be something there.
You got to make it to the top of the list, man. Aardvark.
And that's actually it. When I was when I used to play games on the LANs, local area network gaming days, I was never sorted first by score, but first alphabetically.
Yeah, there
so
you go.
Aardvark is what I put on, and it just 30 years later, I like to throw aardvarks in things.
Still in the top of the list.
Still top alphabetically.
Thank you again, sir, for speaking with us. We appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care of yourself.
Talk to you later.
Ciao, ciao.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Chris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is Matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.